The sheriff's email hit my inbox like a bomb. Notice of lien, property at 2487 Maple Drive. My hands trembled as I clicked open the attachment, coffee forgotten on my desk. A court-ordered lien against my house, for debts I never made. I'm Nicole, and I've spent the last decade being the good daughter. You know the type, the responsible one who gets straight A's, lands the tech job, and somehow becomes the family ATM. While my younger sister Paige floated through life on charm and second chances, I built everything I have brick by brick. You won't believe this, I said into my phone, pacing my office. My co-worker Harry's calm voice answered, What happened? Someone's taken out loans using my house as collateral, but I never signed anything. Are you sure? Harry asked. Check your documents. I already knew, the same way I knew who was behind this, the same people who'd been living in my house for the past 3 years, rent-free, treating it like their castle, while I paid every bill. My mother's voice echoed from childhood. Nicole, help your sister with her homework. Nicole, lend Paige your new dress. Nicole, your sister needs money for college. Always Nicole, always giving, always responsible. I drove home that evening, my grip tight on the steering wheel. The 2-story colonial I'd bought with my own money stood proud against the setting sun. My parents' cars sat in the driveway, the new SUV they needed that I helped pay for. Inside, Mum was cooking dinner. Nicole, you're home early, she said, not looking up from her phone. Dad sat in his usual spot watching TV. I placed the printed email on the kitchen counter. Can someone explain this? Mum glanced at it, her face unchanged. Oh, that? Your father handled the paperwork. We needed to help Paige with some expenses. You used my house as collateral without asking me. Dad finally looked over. We had your information from when you were younger. It's not a big deal. Paige will pay it back eventually. Eventually? My voice cracked. Like the student loans she never paid, or the credit cards you maxed out in my name. Don't be dramatic, Mum said, stirring something that smelled like garlic. Family helps family. You're doing so well in your career. It's your duty to help your sister. I laughed a hollow sound. My duty? I bought this house. I pay the mortgage, the utilities, the property tax, and now you're taking out loans against it? Speaking of Paige, Dad interrupted, she's moving in next week. That boyfriend of hers turned out to be trouble, and she needs a fresh start. The room spun. Moving in? Here? Of course here, Mum said brightly. Where else would she go? You have all this space, and a family should stick together. You'll need to clear out that office of yours. Paige needs her own room. And her bills? I asked, already knowing the answer. Dad's fist hit the table. You owe us. We raised you, put you through school. I had scholarships, I cut in. I worked 3 jobs. I paid my own way. That's enough. He stood up, towering over me like he used to when I was small. This is what family does. Your sister needs help and you're going to provide it. End of discussion. I felt something snap inside me, not breaking, but clicking into place. Quietly, I reached into my bag and pressed a button on the voice recorder I'd started carrying months ago. Sometimes the responsible one isn't just responsible. They're ready. You're right, I said, my voice steady. This is what family does, and I've got quite a collection of what our family does. Mum turned from the stove, something flickering in her eyes. Worry? Recognition? What's that supposed to mean? I picked up my bag, the recorder safely tucked away. It means I'm done being the family bank, and you might want to read the fine print on those loans you took out in my name. Fraud has such interesting legal consequences. Are you threatening us? Dad's voice rose. No, I said, heading for the door. I'm just finally being responsible. For myself. I walked out, leaving them stammering behind me. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed Harry's number. "Hey," I said when he answered. "Remember that lawyer you mentioned? I need their number." "You okay?" he asked. I watched the kitchen light through the window, where my parents were probably already calling Paige to warn her. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." 3 days later, my phone buzzed with Mum's familiar guilt trip text. "Family dinner tonight. Don't disappoint us again." I knew what this meant. An ambush disguised as reconciliation. I spent the afternoon with Harry reviewing documents from the bank. "Look at these signatures," he said, pointing to loan papers from years ago. "They used your information when you turned 18. "Before I even had my first real job," I muttered. "They were planning this for years." "You should skip dinner," Harry suggested. "Nothing good comes from these setups." But I went anyway, recorder in my purse, wearing the armour of a woman who'd finally had enough. The house smelled like Mum's lasagna, her go-to manipulation meal. "There's my successful daughter," Dad called as I walked in. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Paige sat at the table, looking wounded and fragile in that practiced way of hers. "Nicole," she whimpered, "I can't believe you're being so difficult about this. I really need you right now." I took my seat silently. Mum brought out the lasagna, serving Paige first. Always Paige first. "We've been talking," Mum started, her voice honey-sweet, "and we think we've found a solution that works for everyone." "Everyone meaning Paige," I said. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "Watch your tone, young lady." "I'm 32, Dad, not exactly a young lady anymore." "Well, you're acting like a child," Mum cut in. "Paige needs a fresh start. Aaron turned out to be terrible with money." I couldn't help but laugh. "Unlike Paige, who's fantastic with it, especially when it's my money." "That's not fair." Paige's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm trying my best." "Your best?" I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. "Let's talk about your best. Last year alone, 6,000 for your car repairs, 4,000 for dental work, 3,000 for that business venture that never happened." "We're not here to discuss the past," Dad interrupted. "We're here to talk about moving forward. Paige moves in next week. You'll clear out your office, and we'll need you to cover her car payments until she finds a new job." "No?" The silence was deafening. "What did you say?" Dad's face reddened. I said no, not happening. In fact, I reached into my bag. "I have something for all of you." I pulled out 3 identical envelopes. "What's this?" Mum asked, not touching hers. "Eviction notices. You have 30 days to vacate my property." Paige burst into tears. Mum's face went white. Dad stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You ungrateful little—" he started. I pressed play on my recorder, his voice from 3 days ago filling the room. "We used your information. Paige will pay it back eventually." "I have years of recordings," I said calmly. "Conversations about using my social security number, about hiding bills in my name, about the loans you took out when I was barely legal." "You recorded us," Mum whispered. "Your own family?" "Family?" I stood up slowly. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't steal identities. Family doesn't treat their daughter like an endless resource to be drained. "We gave you everything," Dad shouted. "You gave me trauma and trust issues. You gave Paige entitlement and irresponsibility, quite the inheritance." Paige was sobbing now, mascara running. "How could you do this to me?" "To you?" I turned to her. "I bought my first car at 16 working at a grocery store." "Where did you get your first car?" "Oh, right, I paid for it." "That's different," Mum protested. She needed boundaries." I slapped the table. "She needed parents, not enablers. And I needed a family, not parasites." Dad stepped toward me, finger pointed. "You owe us everything you have. We raised you." "You raised me to be responsible," I cut him off. "Congratulations. I'm being responsible 30 days. Get out of my house." I walked to the door, Their protests following me, Paige's wails, Mom's threats, Dad's anger. It all washed over me like old static. One more thing, I turned back. I've frozen all my accounts and credit. Try using my information again, and the next papers you get won't be just eviction notices. In my car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My phone lit up with messages, all caps, guilt trips, threats. I blocked each number methodically. Harry texted, "How'd it go?" "They know now," I replied. "The war's about to start." "You okay?" I started my car, watching through the window as my family huddled together, probably already planning their next move. "No," I typed back, "but for the first time in years I'm being honest about it." The next morning, I met Harry at a coffee shop downtown, spreading documents across the table like battle plans. Bank statements, credit reports, loan applications, years of financial abuse laid bare in black and white. "Your parents were busy," Harry said, highlighting another fraudulent charge. "They used your information for a car loan in 2012, credit cards in 2015, and that home equity line last month." "I was such an idiot," I muttered, remembering my old landlord Esme's warning years ago. "Always read what you sign, honey. Family can hurt you worse than strangers." Harry's phone buzzed. "The bank's fraud department is ready for our call." For the next hour, we detailed every unauthorized transaction. The bank representative's typing echoed through the speakerphone. "Miss, these are serious allegations," she said, "especially against family members." "They stopped being family when they started being criminals," I replied. After the call, Harry looked at me carefully. "You know they won't go quietly, right?" "I know. That's why I need your help with something else." We drove to my house. My parents' cars were gone, probably at work and running errands with my gas money. Inside, I headed straight for the kitchen. "Look at this," I said, pulling open a drawer stuffed with mail. Every bill Paige ever dodged, redirected to my address. Harry whistled, sorting through the collection of overdue notices and collection letters. "She's been busy too." "Wait till you see upstairs." In my parents' room, I opened their filing cabinet. "Mum's always been organised about the wrong things." I pulled out folders labelled with my name, dating back to my 18th birthday. "Holy shit," Harry breathed, reading through loan applications. "They planned this for years. Look at these dates. They started taking out credit in your name the day you turned 18. And here's the best part." I reached to the back of the drawer, pulling out a familiar document. "Remember when Dad said they put me through college? Here's my scholarship letter. Full ride." "They took credit for paying for your education while stealing your identity." Harry's voice rose in disbelief. Classic Mom and Dad. I closed the drawer. Always taking credit for my success while undermining it. Back downstairs, I printed the eviction notice again. They'd torn down the first one and taped it to the fridge. This time, I added a note. "Security cameras have been installed. Destruction of legal notices will be documented." "You really thought this through," Harry said. "I had years to plan while paying their bills." I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Paige. "They think they can wait me out, wear me down with guilt like always. What about your sister? Think she'll try something?" As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Family is forever." Paige always did have a flair for drama, I said, showing Harry the message. "We should document everything," he suggested. "Every threat, every attempt at contact." I nodded, remembering another conversation with Esme years ago. I'd been crying about another loan my parents demanded, and she'd said, "Honey, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face their own consequences." My phone buzzed again, an email from the bank confirming my credit freeze. Another buzz, a text from Felicity, the legal aid Harry recommended. "Documents received, proceeding with formal eviction process." "You know what's funny?" I said to Harry as we gathered the evidence. They always called me the responsible one, but they never thought I'd be responsible enough to stop them. What happens when the 30 days are up? They'll either leave on their own or the sheriff will make them leave. I closed my laptop, but knowing my family, they'll try everything before that happens. Harry helped me carry the documents to my car. You're doing the right thing, Nicole. They're the ones who should feel guilty, not you. I know. I looked up at the house. My house, bought with my money, filled with people who'd seen me as nothing but a resource to drain. I'm done feeling guilty for having boundaries. That evening, I sat in my office, soon to be not Paige's room, and opened a new document. At the top, I typed, "Inheritance isn't always money, a guide to financial family abuse." My phone lit up with another anonymous text. "You can't throw away blood." I typed back, "Watch me," and blocked the number. Opening my email, I found a message from Felicity. "All paperwork filed. Sheriff's office confirmed. The clock is ticking." I smiled, thinking of my family's faces when they realized their perfect plan had backfired. They'd taught me to be responsible after all. They just never expected me to be responsible for myself. The sound of car doors slamming jolted me awake at 6 a.m. Through my bedroom window, I watched Paige struggling with 5 massive suitcases while Mum directed her like a traffic cop. "Just bring them through the front door, sweetie," Mum called out. "Nicole's probably still sleeping." I wasn't. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching them barrel in like they owned the place. Paige looked up, startled to see me. "Oh, Nicole!" She attempted her usual sweet smile. "I thought I'd get settled in early, beat the traffic." "Settled in where exactly?" "Your office, of course," Mum said, dragging a suitcase across my hardwood floors. "We discussed this at dinner." "No, you demanded it at dinner, right before I served you all eviction notices." Paige's smile faltered. "Oh, that silly thing. Mum said you were just having a moment." "A moment?" I descended the stairs slowly. "Like the moment you had when you maxed out 3 credit cards in my name." "That was years ago," Paige protested. "I was going through a rough patch." "You're always going through a rough patch, Paige, and somehow I'm always the one paying for it." Mum stepped between us. "Nicole, stop being difficult. Your sister needs—" "Nothing from me," I cut her off. "You might want to unpack somewhere else, Paige. This house isn't an option." "But I already gave up my apartment." Paige's eyes welled up right on cue. "I have nowhere else to go." "That sounds like a you problem," Mum gasped. "Nicole, how dare you be so heartless to your own sister?" "Heartless?" I laughed. "Was it heartless when you forged my signature on loan documents? When you used my social security number without permission? When you—" "That's enough," Mum snapped. "We're your family. You don't turn your back on family." "Watch me." I pointed to the door. "Get out, now." Paige burst into tears, her trademark move. "You're horrible, after everything we've done for you." "Done for me? Name one thing you've done that didn't end with your hand in my wallet." Silence. That's what I thought. I walked to the front door, holding it open. "Take your bags and leave." They didn't move. Instead, Paige flopped dramatically onto my couch, crying harder. Mum rushed to comfort her, shooting me venomous looks. "Fine," I pulled out my phone. "I'll call the police and report trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Mum hissed. I started dialing. "Try me." Something in my voice must have convinced them. 20 minutes later, I watched from my window as they loaded the suitcases back into their cars. Paige made a show of stumbling, weak from distress. Mum supported her like she was walking to her execution. Just as they were leaving, Paige stormed back to the front door. I opened it before she could knock. "You think you're so perfect," she spat. "So successful, but you're just a cold, selfish bitch who never learned what family means." "No, Paige, I learned exactly what family means to you." She reached past me, snatching the eviction notice from the wall and tearing it to shreds. "There, Good luck proving anything now. I pointed to the small camera in the corner of the hallway, its red light blinking. Thanks for the evidence of tampering with legal documents. Want to try for more? Her face went pale. As she stormed out, my phone buzzed with a text from a blocked number. You'll regret choosing money over blood. I typed back, I'm choosing self-respect over abuse, and blocked that number too. Later that evening, Mum showed up alone. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steel. You're destroying this family, she said from my doorstep. Is that what you want? To tear us all apart? No, Mom, I'm just giving back what you gave me, years of manipulation, guilt, and theft. We're your parents. Everything we did was for your own good. My own good? I pulled out my phone, showing her the credit report. Was it for my own good when you destroyed my credit score? When you used my identity for loans? When you... I'm sick, she interrupted, her voice suddenly weak. The doctor says the stress could... Save the performance, I said. I already called your doctor. Funny how they have no record of these mysterious stress-related illnesses. She dropped the act, her face hardening. You'll regret this, Nicole. Mark my words. No, Mom. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. As she drove away, I texted Harry, Phase 1 complete. They're starting to realise I'm serious. His response came quickly. You okay? I looked around my quiet, peaceful house. Getting there, one boundary at a time. The private investigator's report landed in my inbox with a weight heavier than its digital format suggested. You might want to sit down for this, Harry said over the phone. I scrolled through pages of evidence, dozens of accounts opened in my name, email addresses I'd never seen, loan applications with forged signatures. But what caught my eye was a familiar name. Aaron, Paige's ex-boyfriend. Got his number, I told Harry. I'm calling him. Aaron answered on the third ring. Who's this? Nicole, Paige's sister. A long pause. Oh, shit. Look, I can explain. I'm not calling about money, I cut in. I need information. He laughed bitterly. About your sister? Where do I start? The fake business loans? The credit card scams? Or maybe how she convinced me to co-sign for her car by saying her rich sister would cover everything? My stomach turned. Tell me everything. For the next hour, Aaron painted a picture of systematic fraud. Paige had used my information for years, telling everyone I'd promised to help. She'd even shown people emails, supposedly from me, guaranteeing I'd cover her debts. I should have known it was too good to be true, Aaron said. She always said, Nicole will pay, like it was some magic spell. After hanging up, I called Felicity, my legal aid. I need to lock down everything, I said. Every account, every possibility. Already on it, she replied. But you should know, your mother filed a complaint claiming elder abuse, says you're forcing her out of her home while she's ill. I laughed. Let me guess, no medical records to back it up? None, but they're getting desperate. Desperate people get creative. That afternoon, I had the locks changed and installed a new security system. The locksmith was just finishing when Dad's truck screeched into the driveway. What the hell is this? He demanded, storming up the walk. New locks, I said calmly, for my house. Our house. We've lived here for 3 years. As guests, who committed fraud? He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me like he used to. I built you. Everything you are is because of me. Really? I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. His voice filled the air. We used her information when she was 18. She'll never know. The locksmith looked between us uncomfortably. You're recording everything? Dad's face reddened. Like we're criminals? If the fraud charge fits. I'm warning you, Nicole. Back off now, or what? I stepped closer. You'll forge more documents, open more fake accounts. I've frozen everything, reported all fraud. There's nothing left for you to steal. We're your parents. No, you're thieves who happened to raise me. He raised his hand, not to hit, but to point, but I didn't flinch. The locksmith stepped between us. Sir, he said firmly, I think you should leave. Dad's face contorted. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I held up my phone. Smile for the security camera. Every threat is documented now. After he left, my phone exploded with messages. Mum sent photos of me as a child, captioned with guilt trips. Paige texted from new numbers, alternating between threats and tearful pleas. I blocked each one methodically. That evening, I found a stack of mail hidden behind the microwave. More bills in my name. As I sorted through them, a memory surfaced. Paige at 16, watching me pay bills online. Must be nice, she'd said, being so good with money. It's not about being good with money, I'd replied. It's about being responsible. Well, that's what I have you for, right? She'd laughed. I hadn't realised then that she meant it literally. My phone buzzed, a text from Harry. You need to see this. He'd sent a link to a social media post, Paige's latest masterpiece, a tearful story about her cruel sister throwing their sick mother out of her home, complete with staged photos of Mum looking frail in a hospital waiting room. The comments were exactly what she wanted. How heartless! Family should come first. What kind of person does this to their own blood? I smiled, screenshot the post and sent it to Felicity. More evidence of harassment and defamation? Perfect, she replied. Their desperation is making our case stronger. I walked through my house, touching the walls, the new locks, the security cameras. They thought they were breaking me down, but each desperate attempt only reinforced my resolve. My phone buzzed again, a text from another unknown number. Blood is thicker than water. I typed back, so is fraud, and hit block. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. I was in my kitchen when they arrived, all three of them, with Dad clutching a folder like it was made of gold. We're done playing games, he announced, slapping the folder on my counter. Here's our proof of ownership. I didn't even open it. Proof of what exactly? This house, Mum said triumphantly. We've contributed financially since day one. We have rights. I pulled out my laptop. Funny you should mention contributions. I opened a spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for years. Let's talk numbers. We don't need to see your little computer files, Dad sneered. We have real documents. Real, like the loans you forged in my name? I turned the laptop around. Here's every penny I've spent on this house. Down payment, my savings, mortgage payments, my salary, utilities, taxes, insurance, all me. Paige stepped forward, tears already flowing. But we're family. You can't just... Actually, I can, and I will. I pointed to their folder. Open it. Dad hesitated. Go ahead, I pressed. Show me this proof of ownership. He opened the folder slowly, spreading out papers, receipts for furniture they'd bought, utility bills they'd paid occasionally, a few grocery receipts. I laughed. That's it? That's your claim to my house? We helped furnish it, Mom protested. We've maintained it. With my money. Every time you helped, it was with funds you stole from me. We didn't steal anything. Dad's fist hit the counter. We invested in this family. Something snapped inside me. Years of suppressed anger burst forth. Invested? I shouted, making them jump. You raised Paige to expect endless bailouts. You taught her that my success was her safety net. You forged documents, stole my identity, and now you have the audacity to claim my house. Don't you dare speak to us that way. Mum stepped forward. After everything we've sacrificed. Sacrificed? What exactly did you sacrifice? My credit score, my financial security, my trust? Paige collapsed into a chair, sobbing dramatically. You're destroying our family. No, you destroyed this family. Every time you chose fraud over honesty, every time you picked theft over responsibility, every time you decided my money was your right. Dad raised the folder again. "We'll sue! We'll take this to court!" "Perfect!" I pulled out my phone. "Let's call Felicity right now. I'm sure she'd love to present evidence of your fraud to a judge." "You wouldn't dare," Mum whispered. "Try me." I dialed Felicity's number, putting it on speaker. "Hey Felicity, my family's here with some interesting documents. Think we should add them to the fraud case?" "Absolutely!" Felicity's voice rang clear. "The more evidence of their financial abuse, the better." Dad snatched the folder back. "This isn't over." "Actually," I said, walking to my front door and opening it, "it is. Get out." "You can't just throw us out," Paige wailed. "Where will I go?" "You should have thought about that before using my identity as your personal ATM. Mum tried one last time. "The neighbours already think you're horrible. Throwing out your own family, your sick mother." "Sick," I laughed. "Should we call your doctor again? The one who has no record of these mysterious illnesses?" They stood frozen, realising their usual tactics weren't working. "Leave now," I said firmly, "or I call the police, again." As they shuffled out, Dad turned back. "You'll regret this eventually. When you're alone with your money, you'll see what really matters." "I already regret not doing this sooner," I replied. "And what really matters? It's not money. It's self-respect." Through my security camera, I watched them huddle in the driveway. Paige's sobs echoed dramatically. Mum played the frail victim, and Dad made angry phone calls. Minutes later, my phone lit up with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all condemning my cruelty to my poor family. I blocked each number systematically. Then I saw it, a sheriff's car pulling up to my house. Mum's face lit up with vindictive triumph as she hurried to speak with the officer. But I wasn't worried. I opened my front door, holding up my folder of evidence, the real kind, with bank statements, fraud reports and police reports. The officer looked between us, then at my documents. "Ma'am," he said to my mother, "making false reports is a serious offence." As the officer explained this to my increasingly pale-faced family, I stood in my doorway, watching their last power play crumble. My phone buzzed. "Harry, you okay?" "No," I replied honestly, "but I'm free." Moving day arrived with the subtlety of a hurricane. I stood on my front porch at 8 a.m. sharp, watching the sheriff's car pull up alongside a moving truck. My family hadn't left voluntarily. Of course they hadn't. "Morning," the sheriff nodded. "They inside?" "Where else would they be?" I sighed. They still think this is their house. Right on cue, Paige's voice carried through an open window. "You can't do this! We have rights!" The sheriff knocked firmly on the door. Mum opened it, already in full performance mode, dabbing at invisible tears with a tissue. "Officer," she whimpered, "my daughter is trying to make her sick mother homeless." "Mum, we've been through this," he replied, unfazed. "The property belongs to Nicole. You've been served proper notice. It's time." The movers waited patiently as my family made their final stand. Dad appeared behind Mum, puffing up his chest. "This is illegal," he bellowed. "We've lived here for years." "Without a lease," I added, "without paying rent, while committing fraud." Paige appeared next, mascara strategically smeared. "How can you watch them throw us out? Your own family." "The same way you watched yourself destroy my credit, one day at a time." The sheriff stepped forward. "Folks, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice." Mum tried one last time, turning to the movers. "Please, you can't help them do this. We're being persecuted." The head mover looked uncomfortable, but professional. "Just doing our job, Ma'am. Where would you like your things taken?" "Nowhere," Dad shouted. "We're not leaving." "Actually," I stepped forward, "everything's going to their storage unit, already paid for 3 months." I handed the mover an address. "I'm not heartless, just done." The next 2 hours were a symphony of chaos. Mum alternated between wailing and making frantic phone calls to relatives. Dad stormed around, claiming ownership of things that weren't his. Paige collapsed dramatically every time someone moved her belongings. "This lamp was a gift," Mom protested as movers carefully wrapped it. "From me," I reminded her, "like most things in this house." The neighbours started gathering, drawn by the spectacle. I could hear their whispers, see their phones recording. Mum played to the audience, making sure everyone heard her cries about her cruel daughter. "Did you know," I announced loudly, "that identity theft is a felony, even when it's family?" That shut her up temporarily. As the movers worked, I noticed Paige slipping upstairs. I followed her to my office, where she was hurriedly searching through drawers. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. "More documents to forge, maybe?" She spun around, clutching papers to her chest. "These are mine." "Really? Because they look like loan applications with my forged signature." Her face crumpled. "You were supposed to take care of me. That's what big sisters do." "No, that's what enablers do. I'm done enabling." Back downstairs, the house was nearly empty. Mum sat on the front steps, playing the victim for her phone camera, probably for social media. Dad was arguing with the sheriff about property rights. "Sir," the sheriff said firmly, "continue this behaviour and you'll leave in my car instead of yours." Finally, after what felt like years, the house was clear. My family stood in the driveway, looking lost among their boxed-up lives. "This is your last chance," Mum said quietly. "Family should stick together." "We're not family," I replied. "We're just people who share DNA and a history of financial abuse." "You'll regret this," Dad growled. "Mark my words. Already marked, already documented, already reported to the police." Paige made one final scene, falling to her knees on the lawn. "How will I survive?" "The same way I did," I said, "by actually trying." As they finally drove away, Mum to my aunt's, Dad to a motel, Paige to whatever friend would take her, I noticed an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a note in Paige's handwriting. "You'll always be the villain in this story. Hope your money keeps you warm at night." I walked through my empty house, truly mine now. The silence felt like freedom. My phone buzzed with messages from flying monkeys, distant relatives telling me how horrible I was. I blocked them all. Then I saw a text from Harry. "Need company?" "No," I replied. "For the first time in forever, I need to be alone in my own space." I sat on my stairs, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. My family thought this was the end of their story. They didn't realize it was just the beginning of mine. The sheriff's final words echoed in my mind. Sometimes the hardest part isn't standing up to others. It's standing up for yourself. The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I finished typing the last paragraph of my blog post. My phone buzzed. Harry sending me a link to Paige's latest social media pity party. "Still playing victim?" he texted. "Always," I replied, clicking the link. Her post showed her in a cramped apartment, lamenting her cruel sister who destroyed our family over money. The comments weren't what she expected. Instead of sympathy, people asked questions. Why were you living in her house rent-free? Did you really commit identity theft? Sounds like you're the problem, not your sister. My doorbell rang. I checked the security camera to see Felicity holding a folder. "Good news," she said as I let her in. "The fraud investigation is complete. Your parents are facing charges unless they agree to repayment terms." "Let me guess. They're claiming innocence?" "Well, until we showed them the evidence," she smiled. "They're signing the agreement today." My phone rang, an unknown number. Usually I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. "Nicole?" A familiar voice. "It's Esme." My old landlord, the woman who'd first warned me about family taking advantage. "I saw your blog," she said. "The one about financial abuse. It's helping people, you know." My niece read it and finally stood up to her parasitic brother. After hanging up, I checked my blog's comments, hundreds of stories, all echoing mine, people finding courage, setting boundaries, breaking free. Your story gave me strength, one read. I finally told my mum no. I thought I was alone, said another. Thank you for showing me I'm not. Harry arrived with lunch, finding me deep in responses. Still feel guilty? He asked, setting down takeout containers. No, I said honestly. I feel peaceful. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. The lawyers made a sign. Happy now? I typed back. This was never about happiness. It was about consequences. They're living with Aunt Sarah, Harry said between bites. Heard she's not too thrilled about their fraud charges. Good. Let someone else deal with their drama for once. Another buzz. Paige, I'm starting therapy, not that you care. This time I responded, Good. That's the first responsible decision you've made. We finished lunch as a moving truck pulled up next door. My new neighbours, a young couple, excited for their first home. They waved as they passed my window. Normal neighbours, I mused. What a concept. Harry gathered the takeout containers. You never answered my question from last week. Was it worth it? I looked around my peaceful house. No more financial abuse. No more manipulation. No more guilt. They thought revenge would feel like violence, I said. But sometimes it feels like peace. My laptop pinged. Another blog comment. I've been supporting my adult son for decades. After reading your story, I finally said no. He was angry, but for the first time in years, I can breathe. I started typing a response when my doorbell rang again. The security camera showed Dad, alone, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. What do you want? I asked through the intercom. To return this. He held up a key, my spare house key they'd copied without permission. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He handed me the key without meeting my eyes. Your mother wanted me to tell you you're still wrong, he said. But, he paused, struggling, but maybe we were wrong too. Maybe. The fraud charges. He swallowed hard. They're real. We did that. To our own daughter. Finally, he looked at me. When did we become those people? You always were those people, Dad. I just stopped accepting it. He nodded slowly. Paige is in therapy. Says she's learning about something called financial codependency. Good for her. And us. He cleared his throat. We're selling the boat and the timeshare to pay you back. Actions, not words, Dad. He turned to leave, then stopped. We really thought we were entitled to your success. That's messed up, isn't it? Yes, I said simply. It is. After he left, I returned to my blog. The cursor blinked at me as I typed. People say blood is thicker than water, but self-respect is thicker than both. Sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and others, is saying no. Sometimes the hardest family lesson is learning that karma isn't what you serve, it's what you set free. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Paige. I'm sorry, not for show, for real. I saved her number instead of blocking it. Not for reconciliation, not yet, but for possibility. Sometimes karma comes with consequences, and sometimes consequences come with change.
I always knew I was second best in my parents' eyes, but I never thought they'd skip my wedding. I'm Olivia, and this is the story of how my family's perfect image finally shattered, starting with an empty front row at what should have been the happiest day of my life. Growing up, the dynamic in our house was clear. My younger sister, Kate, was the star, and I was the supporting cast. Every achievement of hers was celebrated like a national holiday, while mine were treated as expected background noise. Kate gets an A in math. Time for a special dinner out. I make valedictorian. Good job, honey. Did you hear Kate made the junior varsity tennis team? Don't get me wrong. I love my sister. Kate's never been deliberately cruel or dismissive. She just grew up in a different reality than I did, one where her every move was applauded and photographed, while I learned to celebrate my victories quietly, by myself. Maybe that's why I went into event planning. There's something satisfying about creating perfect moments for other people, even if my own life was full of overlooked milestones. By 28, I'd built a successful business, planning everything from corporate galas to destination weddings. My parents barely noticed, too busy following Kate's journey of self-discovery through 3 different college majors. Then I met Daniel. He came to me as a client, needing help planning a charity gala for his pediatric medical practice. I remember the first time we met. He was flustered, running late after an emergency surgery, his tie slightly crooked. "I'm so sorry," he said, rushing into my office. Tiny humans don't stick to schedules. Something about his genuine warmth, the way he immediately put me at ease, felt different from anyone I'd ever met. By the end of our first planning meeting, we'd spent more time talking about our lives than the gala. He asked about my family, and I found myself sharing things I usually kept hidden. "It sounds lonely," he said softly when I described growing up in Kate's shadow. Being the responsible one, the one who's expected to understand. No one had ever put it into words quite like that before. Our professional relationship quickly turned personal. Within 6 months, we were dating. Within a year, we were living together. Daniel saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. He celebrated my successes, supported my dreams, and most importantly, made me feel like I mattered. When he proposed, it was perfect in its simplicity. No grand gestures or elaborate schemes, though I'd planned enough of those for clients. Just a quiet evening at home, after I'd had a particularly stressful day with a bridezilla client. "You know what I was thinking?" he said, as we sat on our balcony sharing takeout. "You spend so much time making other people's special moments perfect. Maybe it's time someone did that for you." He pulled out a ring, his grandmother's vintage sapphire, reset in a modern setting. Before he could even finish his speech, I was saying yes through happy tears. The next day, I called my parents to share the news. Mom answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said, in the same tone she used when I told her about my business success. "But listen, can I call you back? Kate just got some exciting news too. She's finally decided to graduate." My sister, at 25, had spent 7 years in college, changing majors like most people change clothes. Apparently, she'd finally accumulated enough credits in various subjects to qualify for a degree. "That's great, Mom," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "But about the wedding?" "We'll talk soon, sweetie. Kate needs help planning her graduation party. It's such a big achievement for her. You know how much she's struggled to find her path." I hung up feeling deflated. Daniel found me staring at my phone. "They don't deserve you," he said simply, pulling me into a hug. I threw myself into wedding planning, determined to create the perfect day. As one of the top event planners in the city, I had access to the best vendors, the most beautiful venues. We chose a date in late May, a Saturday when the weather would be perfect for our garden ceremony. May 20th. I told my parents over dinner, 6 months before the wedding. "I've already sent you the save the dates." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Oh no." "What?" I looked between them, a familiar sense of dread building in my stomach. "That's Kate's graduation weekend," Dad said. "She's finally getting her degree, and the ceremony is that Saturday morning." "But But the wedding's at 4 p.m., I stammered. You could do both. Honey, Mom cut in, using her be reasonable voice. The graduation is in Boston. We need to be there to help Kate prepare, attend the ceremony, and of course there's the celebration after. We can't possibly make it back in time. Then come to the wedding instead, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. It's my wedding day. Dad shook his head. This is a huge moment for Kate. She's worked so hard for this degree. You understand, don't you? You're so good at handling things on your own. There it was, the familiar refrain. Good, responsible Olivia, who always understands, who never makes waves, who plans everyone else's perfect moments while her own fade into the background. Can't Kate walk in a different ceremony? I asked. Most universities have multiple graduation dates. We can't ask her to do that, Mom said firmly. This is her moment. She's so excited about graduating with her friends, and you know how she struggles with change. I looked at Kate, who was staring at her plate, unusually quiet. What do you think, Kate? I asked directly. She glanced up, then quickly looked away. I mean, I've worked really hard for this. And I haven't? The words came out sharper than I intended. I haven't worked hard building my business, creating a life, finding someone who loves me. That's different, Mom said dismissively. You've always been the capable one. Kate needs us there for support. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. And I don't. It's my wedding day. Be reasonable, Olivia, Dad sighed. There will be plenty of people at your wedding. Kate's graduation is more important right now. More important. The words hung in the air like poison. I left dinner early that night, driving home through tears. Daniel was waiting up, and one look at my face told him everything. They're not coming, are they? I shook my head, collapsing into his arms. Then we'll make it so spectacular they'll regret missing it for the rest of their lives, he said firmly. Looking up at him, I felt something shift inside me. All my life, I'd accepted being second best, being the one who understood, who gave way, who compromised. But not this time. Not my wedding day. Yes, I said slowly, a plan already forming in my mind. Yes, we will. What my family didn't know was that being the city's top event planner meant I had connections, lots of them. And I was about to use every single one to create an event that they'd never forget missing. They thought Kate's graduation was more important. Fine, I'd show them exactly what they were choosing to pass up. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I sat in my office, staring at my extensive contact list. Years of planning other people's perfect moments had earned me favors with the best vendors in the business. Now it was time to call them in. First call, Marco, the city's most sought-after florist. Darling, he answered on the first ring. Tell me you're not canceling next month's Henderson wedding. Actually, Marco, this is about my wedding. There was a pause. Your wedding? The one you're planning yourself? Olivia, mes amour, I thought we talked about this. You know the saying about doctors making the worst patients. Things have changed. I said, my voice steady. My parents won't be attending. They're choosing my sister's college graduation instead. The silence on the other end was deafening. Marco had done the flowers for my sister's last 3 graduation parties, the one celebrating her switching majors. Those bastardos, he finally breathed. What do you need? Everything. I want people to walk in and forget how to breathe. I could practically hear him rubbing his hands together. The garden concept we discussed, but elevated. Crystal-draped trees, floating flowers, illuminated pathways. We'll make the Queen of England's wedding look like a backyard barbecue. Next on my list, Philip, the French pastry chef who normally had a 3-year waiting list. Ma chérie, he cooed when I explained the situation. Say no more. I will create something so spectacular. Your parents will weep when they see the photos. 6 tiers minimum, hand-painted sugar flowers, gold leaf, the works, and for the groom's cake. Daniel loves astronomy, I offered. Perfect. A galaxy theme in dark chocolate and mirror glaze. The stars will actually twinkle, I promise you. One by one, I contacted every top vendor I knew. Charlotte, the lighting designer who'd worked on Olympic ceremonies. Jin, the photographer who shot for Vogue. Eduardo, the cocktail genius known for his molecular gastronomy creations. Each one listened to my story, and each one promised to outdo themselves. No budget constraints, I told them all. I've been saving for this my whole life. It was true. While my parents poured money into Kate's ever-changing college career, I'd been quietly building my nest egg. Now it would all go toward creating something unforgettable. When Daniel came home that evening, he found me surrounded by mood boards and sample books. Should I be worried? He asked, only half joking. I showed him Philip's cake design. His eyes widened at the rotating galaxy tire. Okay, that's amazing. But Liv, you don't have to do all this just because of them. I'm not, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. I'm doing it for us. For once in my life, I'm going to create my own perfect moment, not someone else's. He kissed my forehead. As long as you still show up to marry me, the rest is just details. But the details were everything. Over the next few months, I threw myself into planning with an intensity that surprised even me. The garden venue was transformed into an ethereal wonderland. Marco's team created a canopy of crystal-draped cherry blossom trees that would light up as the sun set. Charlotte designed a lighting system that would make the entire garden seem to glow from within. The invitations alone were works of art, hand-calligraphed on handmade paper, with pressed flowers and gold leaf accents. I sent my parents' invitation via registered mail, requiring a signature. They needed to actively choose to reject it. When it came back with my mother's signature, I filed it away carefully, evidence of their choice. The RSVPs started pouring in. My vendor's appreciation for the situation had spread through the industry grapevine, and suddenly everyone wanted to be part of this wedding. Celebrity photographers offered to second shoot for Jin. Award-winning musicians asked to perform at the ceremony. My mother called occasionally, always with the same message. I hope you understand why we can't be there. Kate needs us. Each time, I responded with detailed updates about the wedding plans. The hand-painted dance floor is being installed next week. The vintage champagne is being flown in from France. The string quartet that plays for the royal family is learning Daniel's favorite song. I could hear her hesitation growing with each call. Good. Then came the society page coverage. One of my regular clients was a magazine editor, and she was determined to document every aspect of the planning process. Modern Cinderella plans her own fairy tale, read the first headline. Photos of the preparations appeared weekly, the custom-designed bridesmaids' dresses, the hand-forged ceremony arch, the preview of Philip's spectacular cake. Did you see this week's article? I asked Mom during one of her calls. They're comparing it to Grace Kelly's wedding. Isn't that amazing? Olivia, she said slowly, don't you think this is getting a bit excessive? "Oh no," I replied sweetly. "This is just the beginning." 3 weeks before the wedding, Kate called. She'd never been one for confrontation, preferring to let our parents fight her battles. So this was unexpected. "Liv," she said, her voice small. "I saw the magazine coverage. It looks incredible." "Thank you." I talked to my advisor. "There's another graduation ceremony in July. I could switch." "Don't bother," I cut her off. "It's too late. The plans are set." Mom and Dad feel terrible. No, they don't. They feel uncomfortable because people are talking. Because for once, they can't control the narrative about our perfect family. She was quiet for a moment. "I never meant to always come first." "But you did, and you let it happen. And now you all get to live with that choice." The week before the wedding, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives and family friends, all variations on the same theme. "How can you go through with this without your parents there? Can't you postpone it? Family should come first." I forwarded them all to a special folder labeled, "For later." Daniel found me in my office, reviewing the final timing schedule. "You okay?" I looked up at him, at his kind face and worried eyes. "You know what? I really am. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to make everyone else happy. I'm not being the understanding one, the responsible one, the one who gives way. I'm just being me." He smiled. "That's who I fell in love with, you know. Not the perfect event planner, not the dutiful daughter, just you." 2 days before the wedding, the final piece of my plan fell into place. My friend at the magazine called to confirm the coverage details. Full spread, top photographers, immediate online release with hourly social media updates, she promised. "The whole city will be watching this unfold in real time." "Perfect," I said, thinking of my mother's habit of obsessively checking social media. "Make sure you get lots of shots of the empty seats in the front row." The day before the wedding, I received a text from my father. "It's not too late to change the date." I sent back a photo of the garden setup, the thousands of twinkling lights, the crystal trees, the floating candles in the reflection pool. "You're right," I wrote. "It's not too late for you to change your minds. But it is too late to save your perfect family image." He didn't respond. That night, at the rehearsal dinner, Daniel's parents gave a beautiful speech about welcoming me to their family. I didn't cry until his mother hugged me and whispered, "We'll be in the front row tomorrow, honey. We'll be there." Back in our apartment, I found Daniel adding something to his vows. "Spoiler alert," he grinned. "I may have included a line about choosing you first, every day no matter what." I fell in love with him all over again in that moment. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and perfect. As I sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by my closest friends and Daniel's family, my phone buzzed with a final text from my mother. "The graduation ceremony starts in an hour. We really wish we could be there too." I looked at myself in the mirror, already in my hand-beaded gown, my hair and makeup perfect, and typed back 3 words, "No, you don't." Then I turned off my phone. It was time for my moment, and I wasn't going to let them dim it anymore. As I stood at the entrance to the garden, waiting for my cue to walk down the aisle, even I was stunned by how everything had come together. Marco's crystal-draped trees sparkled in the late afternoon sun, their branches heavy with thousands of white orchids and roses. The pathway before me was lined with illuminated glass orbs that seemed to float just above the ground, creating a river of light leading to the altar. Daniel's father appeared at my side, looking dashing in his tuxedo. After my parents made their choice, he had quietly offered to walk me down the aisle. "Every bride deserves someone by her side for that walk," he'd said. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked now, offering his arm. I took one last look at the empty seats in the front row, the seats that should have held my family. Someone had placed a single white rose on each chair, making their absence even more striking. Perfect. "Ready?" I said, taking his arm. The string quartet began playing their custom arrangement of A Thousand Years. Not the typical wedding version, but a haunting, ethereal adaptation that filled the garden like a spell. As we appear at the end of the aisle, 400 guests rose to their feet, gasping audibly at the sight. I'd chosen a dress that would photograph spectacularly, a custom-designed masterpiece with a bodice covered in handsome crystals that caught the light with every movement, creating the illusion that I was wrapped in starlight. The cathedral-length veil, edged with delicate lace that had taken artisans 3 months to create, floated behind me like a cloud. But it was Daniel's face that made me catch my breath. He stood at the altar, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks, looking at me like I was every star in the sky. In that moment, I forgot about my parents' empty seats, forgot about revenge and perfect moments and society page coverage. All I could see was him. The ceremony was everything we planned and more. As we exchanged our vows under an arch of floating candles and cascading flowers, Charlotte's lighting design shifted subtly, bathing us in a warm golden glow that made everything feel dreamlike. Jin's cameras clicked constantly, capturing every perfect detail. "I choose you," Daniel said in his vows, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed garden. "I choose you first, every day, above all others. I choose you when it's easy and when it's hard. I choose you when the whole world tells us we're wrong. I choose you, Olivia, forever." I saw his mother dab at her eyes in the front row, right where she promised she'd be. The reception was a masterpiece of timing and spectacle. As the sun set, thousands of tiny lights hidden throughout the garden began to twinkle on, transforming the space into an enchanted forest. Philip's cake was unveiled to audible gasps, 6 tiers of hand-painted sugar flowers and gold leaf, with that magical rotating galaxy tire that actually seemed to contain its own universe. Eduardo's signature cocktails changed color as they were poured, each one telling its own story. The dance floor, hand-painted with a design that echoed the stars in my dress, lit up in patterns that followed the dancers' movements. Every detail was captured, photographed, documented, and immediately shared across social media platforms. I knew my mother would be obsessively checking her phone during Kate's graduation celebration. I imagined her watching the spectacle unfold in real time, seeing what she'd chosen to miss. The magazine's social media team was doing an exceptional job, posting stunning photo after stunning photo, each one more magical than the last. At midnight, just as the party was hitting its peak, my phone buzzed with a text from Kate. "Mom's been crying for hours. The graduation party is ruined. This isn't what I wanted." I handed the phone to Daniel without reading her message. "Deal with this for me?" He nodded, tucking the phone away. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let them intrude on it anymore. The next morning, as Daniel and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, the magazine's coverage was already going viral. "Wedding of the Century," the headlines proclaimed. "Event planner's dream wedding sets new standards." Photos of the empty front row chairs with their solitary roses were featured prominently, with captions that told the story of parents who chose to skip the most spectacular wedding the city has ever seen for a college graduation. The society pages were brutal in their commentary. In an era where family values are supposedly paramount, one columnist wrote, "What does it say when parents choose to miss this once-in-a-lifetime celebration? One can only imagine the regret they must feel watching these incredible images from afar." My parents' social circle was merciless. Their phones were flooded with messages from friends and acquaintances, all expressing variations of shocked disbelief. "How could you miss this? What were you thinking? Your own daughter's wedding." Their carefully cultivated image of the perfect family was shattered. No one wanted to hear about Kate's graduation, not when they could talk about the wedding that looked like it came straight from a fairy tale, the wedding her own parents chose to miss. My mother tried calling repeatedly as Daniel and I boarded our flight to Bali. I let each call go to voicemail, saving them in that special folder labeled "For Later." "Olivia, please," she begged in one message. "We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there. Please call us." "The photos are incredible," Kate said in her message. "I should have switched ceremonies. I'm so sorry." "We didn't realize," Dad's voice cracked in his message. "We didn't know it would be like this." But that was the point, wasn't it? They never realized, never knew, never saw me. They'd spent so many years looking past me, choosing Kate, assuming I would understand and accept and give way. They never imagined I could create something so spectacular, something they'd regret missing for the rest of their lives. 2 weeks later, lounging on a beach in Bali, I finally read through all their messages. There were hundreds of them, each one more desperate than the last. The full impact of what they'd missed was hitting them hard. "Should we invite them to the reception we're having when we get back?" Daniel asked, watching me scroll through the messages. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, they made their choice. Now they get to live with it. "You're not worried about burning bridges?" "They burned the bridge," I said quietly. "I just showed them what was on the other side." 6 months later, I won Event Planner of the Year for my own wedding. The photos were featured in every major wedding magazine, each one highlighting the stunning details, the magical atmosphere, and yes, those empty seats in the front row. My parents tried to make amends. They sent gifts, letters, tearful voicemails. Kate switched to part-time studies and moved back home, her own perfect daughter image tarnished by the backlash. Their social life became awkward, every event a reminder of the wedding they chose to miss. "You could forgive them," Daniel suggested one night, watching me delete another series of apologetic texts. "I could," I agreed. "But you know what? I don't want to. For once in my life, I'm not being the understanding one. I'm not smoothing things over or making excuses for them. They chose Kate's 5th graduation over my wedding. They can live with that choice forever." A year after our wedding, I received a call from a prestigious client who had seen my wedding photos. "I want exactly that," she said. "That level of magic, that attention to detail. Money is no object." As I began planning her event, I realized something. My wedding hadn't just been about revenge. It had been about finally stepping into my own light, about creating something spectacular without dimming it to make others comfortable. It had been about choosing myself, just as Daniel chooses me every day. My parents still try to reach out occasionally. Last week, Mom left a message about how they're ready to move forward as a family. I saved it in my special folder with all the others, a reminder of the day they thought my wedding was skippable and how spectacularly wrong they were. Some people say I'm being too harsh, that family deserves forgiveness. Maybe they're right. But as I look through our wedding albums, at the pure joy on our faces, at the magic we created, at the empty chairs that tell their own story, I know I made the right choice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about showing them exactly what they chose to miss. And sometimes the most perfect moment comes not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself. The day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow-deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she'd given me for my birthday. My phone buzzed 3 times before I finally pulled off my gloves to answer it. "Miss Blackwood?" A formal voice I didn't recognize. "This is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My heart stopped. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands. Eleanor's last gift to me. "What happened?" "Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night. He hesitated. "She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family." I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family functions, who'd supported every dream I'd ever had, was gone. "Miss Blackwood, are you there?" "Yes," I managed. "I'm here." What do you need me to do?" "Your aunt left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements." And another pause. "She left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today?" I looked down at the roses. Queen Elizabeth variety, Eleanor's favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. "These have been in my family for generations," she'd said, "just like secrets." At the time, I'd thought it was just another of her cryptic comments. Now, I wasn't so sure. "I'll be there in an hour," I told the lawyer. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who handled old money. All dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my yearly salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. "Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat." I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, trying not to fit it. "Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first?" He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was thick, official-looking, with the law firm's letterhead. The other was smaller, cream-colored, with my name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "Your aunt was an unusual woman," Morton said carefully. "Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements." "That sounds like Eleanor," I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. "She wanted you to read this privately. Then we can discuss the rest." My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Eleanor's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, still clung to the paper. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most people can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter. One that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some people might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral, with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now. But you've always been the strong one, Olivia. The honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. She left everything to me. He nodded, opening the official envelope. Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun. Eleanor had always been generous with me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms. I thought about my father, who'd always resented his younger sister's success. About my cousins, who'd spent years sucking up to Eleanor, hoping to inherit her fortune. About all the family gatherings where Eleanor had sat quietly, watching everyone with those knowing eyes of hers, like she was waiting for something. When is the funeral? I asked. 3 days from now. Your aunt was very specific about the arrangements. The service will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Morton called after me as I reached the door. Miss Blackwood? One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. She said you'll know what to do with the truth. The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. What was it in that second letter? What secret was so important that Eleanor would make it a condition of her will? The gates opened automatically as I approached. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion set amid perfectly manicured gardens, with Eleanor's beloved roses climbing every available surface. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, met me at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here. She left instructions that you were to have full access to her rooms." "Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I won't be long." Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her prize, rose garden. Like everything else about my aunt, it was elegant but full of hidden whimsy. Silk curtains in bright patterns, modern art next to family portraits, and everywhere, touches of her beloved roses. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been. Beautiful Brazilian rosewood, carved with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found it. The small rose carving that concealed the release for the hidden compartment. "Third petal from the left," I whispered, remembering Eleanor's instructions from all those years ago. There was a soft click, and a panel in the bottom slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked to be read at my funeral. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel what seemed like photographs inside. For a moment, I was tempted to open it right there. But I knew Eleanor. Everything she did had a purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, in front of the whole family, she must have had her reasons. I slipped the envelope into my bag and took one last look around the room. On the bedside table was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Eleanor as a young woman, standing in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She was smiling, that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. "What did you know, Aunt Eleanor?" I whispered to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and family drama. My father called 6 times, alternating between concern about my involvement in the arrangements and barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins sent a barrage of text messages, each one more transparently self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close. At night, I'd take it out and look at it, wondering what revelations it contained. What truth was so important that Eleanor would stake her entire legacy on its revelation? The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Eleanor's favorite color, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, like it was weighted with more than just paper and photographs. St. Michael's Cathedral was packed by the time I arrived. The Montgomerys were old money, and Eleanor had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with a mix of family, business associates, and city officials. My father intercepted me as soon as I entered, his face tight with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will. Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily. "We'll all find out together, Dad. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted." He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. "Olivia, if you know something..." "Let go, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service itself was beautiful, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. No beige in sight. The flowers were all roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke about her generosity, her intelligence, her dedication to making the world better. Finally, it was time. Morton caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. My hands trembled slightly as I walked to the podium, Eleanor's envelope clutched in my hands. The cathedral fell silent as I faced the congregation. My father sat in the front row, his face a mask of barely controlled anxiety. Next to him, my cousins John and Rebecca leaned forward eagerly, like vultures awaiting their next meal. I took a deep breath, breathing in the scent of roses that filled the air. In that moment, I could almost feel Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes watching my every move. Inside were several sheets of paper, and as I'd suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father make a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding up what looked like blueprints. The second photo showed the same man at what appeared to be a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, I read from the letter. And this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. My hands were steady as I began reading Eleanor's letter, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. The man in these photographs is Harold Bennett, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of what would become Montgomery Industries. A murmur rippled through the congregation. In the front row, My father's face had gone completely white. Harold and I met at university. I continued reading. We shared a vision of creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize the construction industry. Harold had the technical genius, and I had the business acumen. Together, we created the foundation of what Montgomery Industries would become. I pulled out another photograph, this one showing Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, splitting everything 50-50. The patents, the company, the profits, all of it was shared between us. Until the night of October 15, 1976, when Harold died in what was reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but my Uncle James pulled him back down. I kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had already closed the case. I also discovered something else. Papers had been filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his entire share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust. Papers that bore his signature. I looked up, meeting my father's eyes directly. A signature that I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I held up a stack of documents from the envelope. The original contract between Eleanor and Harold. Forensic analysis of the forged documents. Police reports that were buried. Bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? The question came from my cousin John, who was staring at his uncle, my father, with dawning horror. Why reveal this now? I turned back to Eleanor's letter. "I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Harold would have been proud of. I've used our success to fund research, to support sustainable development, to create opportunities for brilliant minds like his. But I've also spent 45 years watching my brother profit from his crime, watching him raise his children to believe that privilege and power put them above the law." My father had sunk back into his pew, all the fight gone out of him. I continued reading. "The truth is, I should have come forward years ago. But by the time I had gathered all the evidence, the company was employing thousands of people. Going public would have destroyed not just Richard, but countless innocent families who depended on Montgomery Industries for their livelihood. So I made a different choice. I decided to wait, to build, to make sure that when the truth finally came out, the company would survive it." I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a yellowed envelope addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. Which brings me to my final confession. Over the years, I've kept track of Harold's daughter. I've anonymously funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering. I've watched her grow into the kind of brilliant, ethical scientist her father was. Sarah Bennett now runs one of the most innovative green technology firms in the country, though she's never known who was backing her. More guests filled the cathedral as a woman stood up from the middle pews. She was about my age, with Harold's dark eyes and determined expression. Eleanor had arranged everything, even ensuring Sarah Bennett would be here for this moment. The second part of my will, I read, my voice growing stronger, leads a 30% share of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett as partial restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece Olivia, the only member of the Montgomery family who has shown the same commitment to ethics and innovation that Harold and I once shared. I looked up at the stunned faces before me. The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, Sarah Bennett began walking toward the front of the cathedral. She stopped in front of my father, who seemed to have aged decades in the past few minutes. "All these years," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "I thought my father was a failure who abandoned his work. I never knew. Never imagined." "Miss Bennett," I said, stepping down from the podium, "I'm so sorry for what was taken from you." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for having the courage to read that letter. Your aunt, she was watching over me my whole life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right," I said softly, in her own way. The next few hours passed in a blur. The reception was unsurprisingly tense, with family members splitting into factions. Those who demanded the letter be suppressed, those who insisted on going to the police, and those who simply sat in stunned silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he carried for 45 years. In the months that followed, the truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge. But Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennett's technical expertise and my commitment to Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. 1 year after the funeral, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, now blooming more beautifully than ever. Sarah had joined me for what had become our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared love of sustainable innovation. "You know what's strange?" Sarah said, gently touching one of Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. "I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Eleanor. She tried to protect everyone," I said. "The company, its employees, you, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think she made the right choice, waiting all those years?" I considered the question carefully. "I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of. And in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms." "And what about you?" Sarah asked. "Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all?" I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments, her quiet strength. "No," I said finally. "Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. She would be proud of what we've built," Sarah said, gesturing toward the Montgomery Industries building visible in the distance. "A real partnership, just like she and my father intended." I smiled, touching one of the roses Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions. Truth instead of secrets. Partnership instead of power. Building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. "I think both our fathers would like that." That evening, as I sat in Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. "Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was. to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil, if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Eleanor. I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden, where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold. Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow, there would be meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Eleanor's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money, but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy, but to build, not to punish, but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Eleanor had done. That's what she had trained me to do. And somewhere, I knew she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light.
Grandma wants to see you. I looked up from my laptop to find my sister Victoria standing in my doorway, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the frame. Something about her expression made my stomach tighten, a hint of smugness that seemed out of place given our grandmother's condition. "I just saw her this morning," I said, checking the time. It was barely past noon. Dr. Mitchell said she needed rest. Victoria's lips curved into what might have been a smile, but there was nothing warm about it. "Well, she's asking for you now, unless you're too busy with your little writing projects to spend time with our dying grandmother." The jab was typical Victoria, always finding ways to diminish my work as a novelist while flaunting her own success in real estate. I closed my laptop and stood, refusing to take the bait. "I'll go now. My name is Olivia Bennett, and for the past 3 months I've been living in my grandmother Eleanor's mansion, helping care for her as pancreatic cancer slowly took her from us." Victoria visited occasionally, usually when the lawyers were around, but I was the one who sat with Grandma through sleepless nights, who held her hand during chemo, who read to her when her eyes were too tired to focus on the pages herself. The mansion's long hallways echoed with memories as I made my way to Grandma's room. Every antique, every painting, every creaking floorboard had a story. I'd grown up exploring these corridors, discovering hidden nooks and treating a whole place like my personal wonderland. Victoria had always preferred the country club, spending time with the right people, building connections she could use later. Outside Grandma's door, I paused. Voices drifted through the heavy oak, Victoria's lawyer, Mr. Whitman, and someone from the bank. My heart sank. This wasn't a social call. I knocked softly and entered to find Grandma propped up in her massive 4-poster bed, looking frailer than she had that morning. Victoria stood by the window, that same smug smile playing at her lips. 2 men in expensive suits sat in the antique chairs by the bed. "Olivia, darling," Grandma said, her voice weaker than I remembered. "Come sit with me." I moved to her side, taking her thin hand in mine. Her skin felt like paper, so delicate I was afraid it might tear. "Should I come back later?" I asked, eyeing the lawyers. No, Mr. Whitman said smoothly. "We've finished our business. Your grandmother just needs to sign a few papers." Victoria stepped forward, holding out an elegant fountain pen. Grandpa's old one, I realized with a start. "It's all ready, Grandma, just like we discussed." Something felt wrong. Grandma's hand trembled as she took the pen, and her signature was barely legible as she scratched it across the documents. Mr. Whitman gathered them quickly, tucking them into his briefcase with an efficiency that seemed almost rehearsed. "What was that about?" I asked after they'd left, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just some updates to my will dear," Grandma said, her eyes already drooping. "Victoria's been so helpful, explaining all the legal terminology." She drifted off to sleep before finishing the sentence. I tucked the blankets around her, my mind racing. Victoria had never shown much interest in legal matters before, unless there was something in it for her. She's just trying to make things easier, Victoria said from the doorway, as if reading my thoughts. Unlike some people, I actually understand business matters. I turned to face her. What did you do, Victoria? She examined her perfect manicure, unbothered by my tone. I helped Grandma make some sensible decisions about her estate. Someone had to, while you were busy playing nurse and working on your little stories. They're not stories, I said, fighting to keep my voice down. I'm a published author. My last book was nominated for. Yes, some literary award nobody's heard of. She waved her hand dismissively. Meanwhile, I've tripled my real estate portfolio this year alone. I know how to manage wealth, Olivia. How to make it grow. Grandma understands that. Before I could respond, Grandma stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of distress. I hurried back to her side, adjusting her pillows and checking her pain medication levels. By the time I looked up again, Victoria was gone. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered the mansion's dark halls. The place felt different after sunset, more mysterious, as if the antiques and artwork were trying to tell me something. I found myself in Grandma's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound books and family photographs. A picture on her desk caught my eye, me at my college graduation, standing between Grandma and Grandpa. His proud smile, Grandma's elegant pose, my own face beaming with possibility. Grandpa had passed away 2 years later, leaving Grandma to manage their considerable fortune alone. She'd done more than manage it. Eleanor Bennett was a force of nature, turning my grandfather's successful manufacturing business into a diverse empire of investments and real estate. Victoria liked to brag about her business acumen, but she learned everything she knew from Grandma. Movement in the hallway made me freeze. Victoria's voice drifted through the door, speaking in hushed tones on her phone. It's done. No, she has no idea. The old woman signed everything today. Trust me, by this time next month, it'll all be mine. My blood ran cold. The smugness, the lawyers, the mysterious documents, it all made sense now. Victoria had somehow convinced Grandma to change her will, probably taking advantage of the confusion caused by her medication. I wanted to confront her immediately, to wake Grandma and demand answers, but I knew that in her weakened state, any confrontation could be dangerous for her. I needed to be smart about this to figure out exactly what Victoria had done before making my move. The next morning, I called the one person who might be able to help. Mark Sullivan, my best friend since college and now a junior partner at a law firm across town. A new will? He said when I explained my suspicions. That's tricky, Liv. She was competent when she signed it. She's on heavy pain medication, I argued. Victoria must have caught her during a lucid moment, but you know how the drugs affect her judgment. Mark sighed. Look, I can make some discreet inquiries, but unless we can prove undue influence or lack of capacity, there might not be much we can do. I spent the next few weeks gathering evidence while continuing to care for Grandma. Her decline accelerated, and soon she was sleeping most of the day. Victoria visited more frequently now, always with documents for Grandma to sign, always when she was most heavily medicated. I documented everything: dates, times, medications, who was present. I took photos of the pill bottles, noted Grandma's mental state, recorded conversations when I could, but it felt like trying to hold back the tide with a paper cup. One afternoon, I was helping Grandma sort through some old photographs when she suddenly gripped my hand with surprising strength. The blue room, she whispered, her eyes intense, behind the painting of the lighthouse. Remember. Before I could ask what she meant, Victoria swept in with another lawyer in tow. Grandma, Mr. Patterson is here about those property transfers we discussed. I was ushered out of the room, Grandma's cryptic message echoing in my mind. The blue room had been her private study, a place where even Victoria and I weren't allowed to play as children. And the lighthouse painting, I remembered it hanging above an antique writing desk, one of Grandma's favorite pieces. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I slipped into the blue room. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting strange shadows on the walls. The lighthouse painting hung exactly where I remembered, its pale beam seeming to wink at me in the darkness. I reached for the frame, my heart pounding. It swung away from the wall easily, revealing a small wall safe behind it. But without the combination, it was useless. I tried a few meaningful dates. Grandma's birthday, the day she married Grandpa, the year the company was founded. Nothing worked. A noise in the hallway sent me scrambling back to my room, the safe's contents remaining a mystery. The next day, Grandma took a turn for the worse. The hospice nurse increased her medication, and she drifted in and out of consciousness. Victoria practically moved into the mansion, bringing an endless parade of lawyers and bankers through Grandma's room. I kept trying to get a moment alone with Grandma to ask about the safe, but Victoria was always there, hovering, controlling access like a jealous guard dog. 2 weeks later, Grandma Eleanor Bennett passed away quietly in her sleep. I was holding her hand when it happened, reading to her from her favorite Jane Austen novel. Victoria was at a business lunch. The funeral was exactly the kind of elaborate affair Victoria loved. Hundreds of guests, expensive flowers, catered reception at the country club. I sat in the front row, numb with grief, while Victoria worked the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser. Such a tragedy, I overheard her telling someone. But at least everything's been properly arranged. The estate will be in capable hands. The will reading was scheduled for the following Monday. As I drove to the lawyer's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. Victoria's new Mercedes was already parked outside, gleaming in the morning sun like a well-polished threat. Mr. Whitman's office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place that reeked of old money and quiet power. Victoria sat in one of the visitor chairs, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than I made in 3 months as a writer. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Whitman asked, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. What happened next felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. The new will, signed just weeks before Grandma's death, left everything: the mansion, the business interests, the investments, everything to Victoria. My inheritance had been reduced to a small trust fund that would pay out a modest monthly stipend. "Are you sure this is right?" I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Grandma always said she wanted to split things equally. "The previous will was revoked," Mr. Whitman said smoothly. "Your grandmother was very clear about her final wishes." Victoria stood, gathering her designer purse. "Well, I should get started. There's so much to manage." She paused by my chair, her smile sharp as a razor. "Don't worry, little sister. I'll let you keep your room in the mansion. For now, though you might want to start looking for a small apartment, something more appropriate to your means." I sat there long after they'd left, staring at the copy of the will in my hands. Everything we'd grown up believing, all of Grandma's promises about preserving the family legacy for both of us, gone with a few strokes of a pen. But as I drove back to the mansion, no longer my home, I realized with a fresh wave of pain. I remembered Grandma's last cryptic message. The blue room. The lighthouse painting. She'd been trying to tell me something. That night, I waited until Victoria retired to the master suite. She'd already moved into Grandma's room before making my way to the blue room. The lighthouse painting watched as I once again tried to crack the safe's combination. Just as I was about to give up, a memory surfaced. Grandma teaching me to play chess when I was 7, telling me that sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one. On a hunch, I tried the chess notation for her favorite opening move, E4. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single envelope, my name written in Grandma's elegant handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, and what I found inside would change everything. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that the game wasn't over, it was just beginning. My hands trembled as I unfolded the contents of Grandma's envelope. Inside I found a letter, a small brass key, and what looked like a bank statement from the Cayman Islands. "My dearest Olivia," the letter began in Grandma's familiar elegant script. "If you're reading this, then 2 things have happened. I'm no longer with you, and Victoria has shown her true colors. I've watched her manipulate and scheme her way through life, always taking the easy path, never understanding the true value of what we built. But you, my darling girl, you have your grandfather's heart and my mind, a dangerous combination." I sank into Grandma's old leather chair, my heart pounding as I continued reading. "The key enclosed opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 2247. What you find inside will help you restore balance to our family legacy. Victoria believes she knows everything about our family's wealth. But your grandfather and I were smarter than that. We never kept all our eggs in one basket." The bank statement showed a balance that made my eyes widen. Over $50 million in an offshore account completely separate from the family's known assets. "But be careful, my dear," the letter continued. "Victoria is more dangerous than you know. The night your grandfather died wasn't the peaceful passing everyone believes it to be. I've spent years gathering evidence, protecting you both while trying to understand the truth. Now that burden passes to you. I nearly dropped the letter. Was Grandma suggesting that Victoria had something to do with Grandpa's death? The implications were staggering. A noise in the hallway made me quickly return everything to the safe except the key, which I slipped into my pocket. Just in time, Victoria appeared in the doorway, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than my car. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded, eyes narrowing. "Just remembering," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. This was always Grandma's favorite room. "Well, it's my house now," she said, walking in and running her hand possessively along the antique desk. "And I'm thinking of renovating. All these old things, they're so dated." I watched her examine the lighthouse painting, my heart racing. Did she know about the safe behind it? But she just wrinkled her nose and moved on. "You should start packing," she added casually. "I'm having the house redecorated next week, and your room needs to be cleared out." The will said I could stay. "The will gives me full control of the property," she cut in, her smile sharp. "And I'm exercising that control. You have until Friday." After she left, I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about Grandma's letter. If what she suggested was true, my sister wasn't just greedy. She was dangerous. The next morning, I called Mark. "I need your help," I said when he picked up. "What do you know about Cayman Islands banking laws?" "Enough to know I should pretend you didn't ask me that," he replied. "What's going on, Liv?" We met at a small cafe far from the mansion, where I showed him copies I'd made of the documents from the safe. His eyes widened as he read. "This is significant," he said finally. "If these accounts exist, they were never included in the estate inventory. And these allegations about your grandfather's death. Can you help me access the safety deposit box?" I asked. "I don't want to do it alone." He nodded slowly. "First thing tomorrow. But Liv, be careful. If Victoria realizes what you found." "She won't," I assured him, though my stomach churned at the thought. That afternoon, as I packed my room, I found myself looking at old family photos. One in particular caught my eye. Victoria and me as children, standing with Grandpa in his study. He was showing us his collection of rare coins, something that had fascinated us both as kids. Victoria was holding one, smiling at the camera, while I examined another with a magnifying glass. The memory hit me suddenly, Grandpa teaching us about numismatics, explaining how some coins were worth millions to the right collector. His collection had been extensive, worth a fortune, but after his death. "The coins," I whispered, "they hadn't been listed in any of the estate inventories. At the time, everyone assumed they'd been sold years ago, but what if?" The next morning, Mark met me outside First National Bank just as it opened. The process of accessing the safety deposit box was surprisingly straightforward. Grandma had already added my name to the access list. When the bank officer left us alone in the viewing room, my hands shook as I inserted the key. Inside the box was another envelope, a USB drive, and a small leather-bound notebook. "Your grandfather's journal," I breathed, recognizing his handwriting. The envelope contained detailed records of transactions, offshore account numbers, and most importantly, a complete inventory of Grandpa's coin collection, which, according to the documents, had been secretly moved to a private vault in Switzerland just days before his death. "Look at this," Mark said, pointing to one of the transaction records. A wire transfer from Victoria's personal account to an unlisted number in the Cayman Islands, dated the day before your grandfather died. "But she was just starting out then," I said, frowning. "She wouldn't have had this kind of money. Unless she was working with someone else," Mark suggested. "Someone who stood to gain from your grandfather's death." The USB drive contained video files, security footage from the mansion's old camera system. With trembling fingers, I plugged it into my laptop. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Victoria in Grandpa's study late at night, arguing with a man I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it was the night before Grandpa died. "You promised me control," Victoria was saying. "Once he's gone, I get everything." The man's response was inaudible, but his body language was threatening. Victoria looked scared but determined. The next clip showed Grandpa in his study the following evening, drinking from his usual whiskey glass. Hours later, the cameras caught Victoria and the same man removing something from the study. Grandpa's briefcase. The one he always kept his most important documents in. This is evidence of conspiracy, Mark whispered. But to prove murder, we'd need more. I opened Grandpa's journal, flipping to the last entries. His normally neat handwriting was shaky, urgent. V meeting with Emma again. Can't trust. Changed my will today. Eleanor knows something's wrong. Coins moved. Safe in Zurich. Account numbers in. The rest was illegible, but it was enough. Grandpa had known something was wrong. He tried to protect the family's assets, working with Grandma to move things offshore before it was too late. We need to move carefully, Mark advised. Victoria has legal control of the estate right now. One wrong move, and she could liquidate everything before we can stop her. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Moving company arrives tomorrow at 9. Anything left in your room gets thrown out. I looked at Mark, my mind racing. How quickly can you file an injunction? Give me an hour with these documents, he said, already pulling out his phone. And Liv, don't go back to the mansion alone. But I had to go back. There was something else in the blue room safe, something I'd glimpsed but hadn't had time to grab. A small red notebook that could only be Grandma's private diary. I'll be careful, I promised, gathering the documents. Just get that injunction. As I drove back to the mansion, storm clouds gathered overhead. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning of things to come. Victoria's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar black SUV. I let myself in quietly, making my way to the blue room. But as I approached, I heard voices. Victoria and a man, arguing in heated whispers. She knows something, the man was saying. His voice was familiar, the same one from the security footage. The bank called. She accessed the box this morning. Impossible, Victoria snapped. She's nothing but a wannabe writer. She doesn't know anything about. I must have made a noise because they both suddenly fell silent, then footsteps headed toward the door. I turned to run, but I wasn't fast enough. Well, Victoria said from behind me, her voice cold as ice. It seems my little sister has been quite busy today. I spun around to face her and the man. Tall, expensively dressed, with cold eyes that assessed me like I was a bug to be squashed. Missing something? Victoria asked, holding up Grandma's red diary. Maybe this? The man took a step forward, and I realized I was trapped between them and the stairs. We need to talk, little sister, Victoria said, her smile sharp as broken glass. About family secrets and why some of them should stay buried. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the scene like a macabre photograph. In that instant, I saw something in Victoria's eyes I'd never seen before. Not just greed or anger, but genuine darkness. And I knew that everything was about to change. Thunder cracked overhead as I faced my sister and her mysterious companion in the mansion's dark hallway. Victoria held Grandma's diary like a weapon, her manicured nails digging into its worn red cover. Marcus, why don't you make sure we're not interrupted? Victoria said, her eyes never leaving my face. The man, Marcus, moved to block the stairs, effectively cutting off my escape route. Now then, Victoria continued, stepping closer. Let's discuss what you found in that safety deposit box. My mind raced. Mark would be filing the injunction soon, but legal protection wouldn't help if I didn't make it out of here. I needed to play this carefully. Just some old photos, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Memories of better times. Before you started conspiring to kill our grandfather. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's perfectly composed expression cracked for just a moment, surprise, then fear, then something darker flashing across her face. You always did have an overactive imagination, she said, but her voice wavered slightly. All those silly stories you write. Is that what this is? Another one of your fantasies? The security footage isn't a fantasy, I shot back. Neither are the bank records showing your payment to Marcus the night before Grandpa died. Marcus took a step forward, but Victoria held up her hand to stop him. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said. What happened to Grandpa was unfortunate, but natural. Everyone knows that. Grandma knew better. I nodded toward the diary in her hands. That's why she kept records, isn't it? Why she spent years gathering evidence. She was protecting me while building a case against you. Victoria's laugh was sharp and brittle. Protecting you? Poor, naive Olivia. Grandma was protecting her money just like everyone else in this family. Why do you think she changed her will at the end? Because you manipulated her while she was dying. I helped her see reason, Victoria snapped. This family's wealth needs someone strong to manage it, someone who understands business, not some dreamer who spends her time making up stories. Is that what you told Grandpa too? I asked quietly, before even Marcus poisoned his whiskey. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My cheek stung as Victoria grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. You need to be very careful about what accusations you make, she hissed. Just then, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. Victoria kept her grip on my arm as she checked her screen. I watched her face pale as she read what I knew must be a notice of the injunction Mark had filed. What did you do? She demanded, shaking me. A calm settled over me, the kind of clarity that comes when you know you finally gained the upper hand. I did exactly what Grandma and Grandpa prepared me to do. I protected our family's true legacy. Marcus. Victoria's voice rose with panic. She's frozen our access to the estate. Call Harrison. Tell him to start liquidating everything now. That won't work, I said, unable to keep the satisfaction from my voice. The offshore accounts, the coin collection in Switzerland, none of it was ever part of the estate. Grandpa moved everything before he died, didn't he? That's why you were so angry that night. He'd outmaneuvered you. Victoria's grip loosened as realization dawned in her eyes. The coins. How did you? Grandma left me a key, but not just to the safety deposit box. She left me the key to everything. All the accounts, all the documentation, all the evidence against you. It's already in the hands of the authorities. The sound of cars pulling up outside made Victoria's head snap around. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, illuminating the hallway in an eerie strobe. Police, a voice called from downstairs. Victoria Bennett, we have a warrant. Marcus bolted toward the back stairs, but Victoria remained frozen, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. You're bluffing, she whispered. You couldn't possibly have. I pulled out my phone and played the security footage, not the grainy version from the USB drive, but a crystal clear copy showing Victoria and Marcus in Grandpa's study, discussing payment details and poison dosages. Grandma upgraded the security system after Grandpa died, I explained. Installed hidden cameras everywhere. She knew you'd try again eventually. Victoria lunged for my phone, but I was ready this time. I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her past me. She stumbled, Grandma's diary flying from her hands. It hit the floor and split open, spilling photographs and documents across the hardwood. Footsteps thundered up the stairs as police officers swarmed the hallway. Victoria tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. I watched in silence as they handcuffed my sister, reading her rights as they led her away. One of the detectives stayed behind to take my statement. As I described discovering Grandma's letter and the evidence she'd gathered, I couldn't help but look through the scattered contents of her diary. Among the papers was a photograph I'd never seen before. Grandma and Grandpa on their wedding day, young and radiant with possibility. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, the detective said, following my gaze. She contacted us months ago, sharing her suspicions, but she needed time to gather concrete evidence. That's why she played along with Victoria's manipulation, I realized. She was protecting me while building an airtight case. Hours later, after the police had finished processing the scene, I sat alone in the blue room. The lighthouse painting still hung on the wall, now hiding an empty safe, but its secrets had served their purpose. My phone buzzed, a message from Mark. Just heard from the Swiss bank. The coin collection is intact. Estimated value, $75 million. Call me when you can. I leaned back in Grandma's chair, emotion washing over me in waves. Victoria and Marcus were in custody, along with several co-conspirators including Mr. Whitman, who had helped orchestrate the fake will changes. The family's true assets were secure, and more importantly, Grandpa would finally have justice. A soft knock at the door made me look up. Anna, our housekeeper of 20 years, stood there with tears in her eyes. Miss Olivia, she said, I should have told you sooner. The night your grandfather died, I saw. I stood and took her hands in mine. It's okay, Anna. We know everything now. She nodded, squeezing my hands. Your grandmother was so proud of you. She knew you'd be the one to make things right. As if to emphasize her words, I noticed something carved into the arm of Grandma's chair, tiny letters worn smooth by years of use. Truth prevails. Over the next few weeks, the full story emerged. Victoria had partnered with Marcus, a corrupt investment banker, to gain control of the family fortune. They'd started with Grandpa, thinking his death would leave everything vulnerable. But Grandpa had suspected something was wrong and had taken steps to protect his legacy. Grandma had carried on his work, carefully documenting Victoria's crimes while appearing to be a helpless victim. She'd known my sister would try to take advantage of her illness, and she used that assumption to lay a perfect trap. The investigation uncovered other victims, wealthy families whose fortunes had mysteriously disappeared after dealing with Marcus's investment firm. Victoria had been his inside connection to high society, helping him identify targets while building her own real estate empire on stolen money. I donated most of Grandpa's coin collection to museums, keeping just a few special pieces he'd shown me as a child. The offshore accounts were restructured into a charitable foundation, funding arts education and literacy programs, causes that would have made Grandma smile. The mansion felt different now, lighter somehow. I kept most of the antiques but opened up the dark rooms, letting in sun and fresh air. The blue room became my writing study, the lighthouse painting still keeping watch over its empty safe. One evening, about 6 months after Victoria's arrest, I found myself looking through old family albums. There was a picture of all of us, Grandma, Grandpa, Victoria, and me, taken at my high school graduation. Everyone was smiling, looking like the perfect family. Appearances can be deceiving, Grandma had always said. But the truth has a way of coming out. She'd left me more than just money and evidence. She'd left me a lesson about patience, about justice, about the power of playing the long game. Victoria had always thought strength meant taking what you wanted. She never understood that true strength lies in protecting what matters. The next morning, I visited Victoria in prison. She looked smaller somehow, her designer clothes replaced by a drab uniform, her perfect makeup gone. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I placed Grandma's diary on a table between us. "Because you should know who she really was, who they both were." Victoria stared at the diary, her hands twitching as if she wanted to grab it. "They never trusted me," she said bitterly, "always favored you." "They trusted both of us," I corrected. "You're the one who betrayed that trust." I left her there with the diary, knowing she'd finally understand the full scope of her failure. Not just the loss of money or freedom, but the loss of something far more valuable, the legacy of two people who had built something worth protecting. Back at the mansion, I walked through rooms filled with memories, the antiques that had witnessed our family's rise and fall, the photographs that told stories both true and false, the quiet corners where a little girl once played while her grandmother watched, planning, preparing, protecting. In the blue room, I sat at my desk and began to write. Not a novel this time, but a different kind of story. The true story of Eleanor Bennett, who had outmaneuvered her enemies from beyond the grave. Of William Bennett, who had sacrificed everything to protect his legacy. Of a sister consumed by greed, and another sister who found strength in truth. Outside, the sun set behind the lighthouse painting, its beam seeming to wink at me one last time. I touched Mong's sapphire pendant, a piece of the inheritance that really mattered, and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply letting the truth come to light, one carefully planned revelation at a time. I am Olivia Bennett, guardian of my family's true legacy. Not the money or the mansion or the rare coins, but the wisdom to know that wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the choices we make, the truths we protect, and the stories we leave behind. And my story was just beginning.